I always knew my family was strange, but I never imagined they'd lie to my face for over a decade. Last Sunday, at my sister's baby shower, surrounded by pastel balloons and fake smiles, I discovered something that shattered everything. They thought I wouldn't notice the property deed casually slipped into a gift box, but I did. That house? It was supposed to be mine. My grandfather said so. They rewrote the story while I wasn't looking. But now, I'm done playing nice. I'm Claire, and this is the story of how my family tried to erase me, and how I made sure they never forgot. My father's 60th birthday fell on a rainy Saturday, the kind of gray that made every color indoors pop with artificial warmth. The house was filled with laughter, jazz classics, and the scent of vanilla cake, Jessica's favorite. Not Dad's, but no one seemed to notice or care. I arrived early, as usual, carrying a hand-wrapped gift I'd spent 3 weeks curating. A shadow box of old baseball tickets, photos, and a signed glove from my dad's high school glory days. No one even glanced at it once it hit the gift table. Jessica swept in an hour later, radiant and perfectly made up, cradling a sleek white box. "It's a digital portrait," she announced as she presented it to Dad. "AI enhanced. I fed it all the photos from your youth." Gasps of admiration filled the room as my father pulled the frame from the wrapping. His smile trembled, and for a moment, I thought he might cry. "Jess, this is incredible," he said, voice breaking. Mom beamed. "She always knows what touches the heart. She's the light of this family." I smiled tightly. That word again. Light. As if the rest of us were shadows. Later, while refilling drinks, I paused at the hallway gallery. Rows of framed memories stared back at me. Birthdays, holidays, vacations. I looked for myself. I found one photo, faded, cropped. My left arm was cut off and I wasn't even in focus. Jessica, as a toddler, was front and center. I stood there longer than I meant to, until a voice behind me murmured, "You're always looking backward, Claire." It was my mother, holding a glass of wine and an amused expression. "I was just reminiscing," I said. "You shouldn't dwell so much. Not everything from the past needs to be carried into the future." Later that night, helping clean up after most guests had left, I went upstairs to return a sweater Mom had lent me months ago. I opened the guest bedroom door, my old room once, now converted, and saw the familiar cedar chest at the foot of the bed. Nostalgia tugged at me. I knelt, opened the lid, and sifted through forgotten scraps. Yearbooks, report cards, postcards. A folded envelope lay buried under a stack of yellowing stationery. The handwriting stopped me cold. My grandfather's looping cursive. I unfolded the letter carefully. It was addressed to me, dated the day after my 18th birthday. "Claire, you've always had a mind of your own. That's a gift and a burden. I know your parents don't always understand that. I want you to know..." But the page ended mid-sentence. No second sheet, no signature, just a jagged tear at the bottom. My chest tightened. I walked downstairs, letter trembling in my hands. "Mom," I asked, trying to keep my tone even, "do you know anything about this?" She glanced at the page. Her expression flickered just briefly. "Oh, that? I think your grandfather wrote a lot of things he never meant to send. He was getting forgetful. But it was in the cedar chest. Probably slipped in. Don't read too much into it, honey. He meant well, but he wasn't always stable near the end." I held her gaze. Was there a second page? She took a sip of wine. "Claire, really. You don't need that kind of burden. Some things are better left in the past." 2 days later, I visited Jessica's place to drop off a baby blanket I'd knit. We sat on her porch, sipping tea. She talked about her pregnancy, how the nursery would be ocean-themed, how she was thinking of hiring a nanny. Her life was seamless, curated. "I just checked the trust account Dad set up back in '08, she said offhandedly. "I might pull from it for some of the baby furniture." My hand paused mid-air. "Trust account?" "Yeah, the one from Grandpa. Dad's been managing it. Didn't he tell you?" "No," I said slowly. "He didn't." She looked confused for a second, then said, "Huh. Maybe because you said you didn't want to be tied down with money stuff?" "I never said that. That night, I sat at my computer and dug into an old folder where I kept scans of family documents. I'd scanned them years ago while helping my dad digitize paperwork. I found one labeled Will 2012 Draft. It was a scanned image of my grandfather's will. I scrolled through until I found the names. And then I saw it. My name, Claire Margaret Whitmore, had been crossed out in pen, slashed through. Beside it, in the margin, the initials RW in handwriting I recognized. My father's. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, my throat dry. I remembered the torn letter, the cropped photo, the shadows I'd always been told were normal. They weren't. I was being erased. I didn't sleep the night I found the will. My mind raced, sifting through every moment that suddenly took on new meaning. Quiet exclusions, comments I used to brush off. At 3 a.m., I found myself dialing a number I hadn't used in years. "Whitmore and Dale Legal," said a voice on the other end. "I'm trying to reach Mr. Leon Dale. I believe he handled my grandfather's estate." There was a pause. "This is Leon." "It's Claire Whitmore." Another pause. Then, "Claire. I remember you. What's this about?" I need to know what the original will said, the one before the changes. By noon the next day, I was sitting in his downtown office, clutching a printed document with trembling fingers. Leon leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Your grandfather's 2012 will left 70% of his estate to you. The remaining was to be divided between your cousin Matthew and the family foundation." I looked up. "Jessica wasn't mentioned?" He shook his head. "Not in that version." "And the final will?" He frowned. "Here's where it gets strange. The version that was filed was dated 3 days after your grandfather's death." My breath caught. "That's not possible." "Exactly. The date makes it legally invalid, but no one contested it at the time." I stared at the document. "Who submitted the new version?" He scanned his notes. "It wasn't your parents. It was a relative. Someone named Vivian Moore." My chest tightened. Aunt Vivian. She had practically raised me during my middle school years when my parents were dealing with work stress. Then, one day, she just left. No goodbyes, no explanations. I never heard from her again. That evening, I combed through old contacts, social media, and directories until I found an address and a phone number. I called. A quiet voice answered. Vivian speaking. "Dee, it's Claire." Silence. Then a soft exhale. "Oh, Claire." I wondered when this day would come. So 2 days later, we met at a quiet cafe far from the city. She looked older, thinner, with silver streaks in her hair. But her eyes were the same, sharp, kind, observant. "I was there when your grandfather signed the original will," she said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. "He was lucid, determined. He wanted you to have control. He said you were the only one who didn't see family as a bank." "So what happened?" "After he died, your parents came to me, told me they needed help updating some paperwork. They said it was just procedural. I trusted them." She paused. "Then I realized they were using my name, my old power of attorney, to file a fake document." I stared at her. "Why didn't you say anything?" "They threatened me," she said quietly. "They found out I had filed for bankruptcy in 2005, said they'd leak it to my employer, to the press. They made me sign a non-disclosure agreement. I was scared, Claire." I reached out, touched her hand. "You don't have to be scared anymore." Back home, I sat in the silence of my apartment, staring at the email Vivian had just sent me. Attached was a recording. She had secretly taped a conversation with my mother back when everything unraveled. I hit play. "She doesn't need any of it," my mother's voice crackled through the speakers. "Claire's too proud, too detached. She wouldn't know what to do with that kind of money. Jessica, on the other hand, she listens, she fits." I closed my laptop, my hands numb. My mother hadn't just erased me from a document. She had rationalized it, justified it. Jessica, meanwhile, had begun to pull away from me, texts unanswered, calls missed. I stopped by her house unannounced. Her face was pale, her eyes heavy. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded quickly. "Just tired." "Jessica, did you know?" She blinked. "Know what?" About the will, the trust, about Mom using Vivian's name. She looked away. I don't want to talk about this, Claire. But you're benefiting from it. I didn't ask to be part of it. But you are. Her voice trembled. If I admit it's wrong, I lose everything. There it was. Self-preservation. The seed our parents had planted so deep it had taken root in her soul. That night, Vivian sent one more file. A second recording. It was Mom again. She's not built for that life. Claire's always been independent. She doesn't need inheritance. She needs to learn her place. I sat in the dark, the weight of those words pressing down on my chest. Learn my place? They had spent years carving out where I should be, and now I was about to show them where I will be. Jessica's baby shower was hosted at a sleek downtown loft rented just for the occasion. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the room in golden light, bouncing off champagne flutes and pastel blue napkins that read, "Oh, baby." Everyone wore smiles like masks, perfect, curated, photogenic. I stood near the edge of the crowd, clutching a small box wrapped in navy ribbon. Inside was a silver rattle engraved with Jessica's name and due date. Something simple, thoughtful. But somehow, already I knew it would be overshadowed. Midway through the event, Dad raised his glass. "Today isn't just about celebrating new life," he said, voice rich and rehearsed. "It's also about passing things on, legacy, continuity." He turned to Jessica. "Your mother and I wanted to give you something meaningful. So, we're transferring ownership of the 73rd Street condo to your name. It's from the family trust, from Grandpa." Applause erupted. Jessica gasped theatrically. Mom dabbed her eyes. I froze. That condo was worth over $2 million. It was also the property Grandfather had mentioned during one of our last walks together. He had called it the safety net for my future. I smiled, mechanically, my fingers pressed into my palms. I didn't trust myself to speak. People swirled around Jessica, hugging, laughing. I slipped away and found the guest bathroom down the hall. I closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled. The air smelled like lilac soap and expensive hand lotion. I reached for a towel and knocked over a small photo frame perched on the counter. The frame fell, back popping open. A folded sheet of paper slid halfway out. I pulled it free. It was a photo. More precisely, a snapshot of a document. A property transfer deed. The date caught my eye first. 3 days before Grandfather's death. Not after. Before. His signature was scrawled across the bottom. My stomach flipped. I stepped out into the hall, found Dad near the food table refilling his drink. I held up the photo. "This transfer happened before he died." He glanced at it, then at me. "That version was never filed." "But it's real." He sipped his scotch. "Claire, documents only matter if they're processed. You work in finance. You understand that better than anyone. You knew he wanted me to have it." "That's not how estate law works." He turned away. I stood there, invisible again, surrounded by people toasting a legacy that wasn't meant for them. That night, back in my apartment, I turned off all the lights and sat in silence. My reflection in the window stared back at me, blurred by city lights. I opened my phone. Notifications from the shower flooded my screen. Pictures of Jessica holding the deed, of my parents beaming beside her, of the cake that said, "Welcome to the world, baby Theo." I deleted them all. Over the next few weeks, my world narrowed. Friends who once offered sympathy stopped calling. Coworkers who used to chat in the break room became distant. Word had spread, quietly, subtly, that I was causing drama in the family. Mom left a voicemail. "Claire, I don't know what you're trying to do, but this isn't healthy. You're the only one keeping this fire alive. Maybe you should talk to someone." No apology, no explanation, just quiet blame wrapped in concern. I stopped going to Sunday dinners, removed myself from the family group chat, deleted every photo of family gatherings from my phone and laptop. I journaled instead. Entry after entry began with the same line. I never really existed in this family. I skipped Jessica's maternity photo shoot, didn't respond to her texts. And yet, a part of me watched, lurked, listened. Then, one night, my phone rang. Jessica. I hesitated, thumb hovering. I answered. Claire? Her voice cracked. I'm here. A pause. Then a sob. I know everything. I read the files, the recordings, what they did to you. I waited. I didn't know how to admit it. If I said it out loud, I'd lose them. I'd lose everything. I swallowed. You knew weeks ago. I was scared. So was I. She cried harder. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. My chest ached. Not with anger this time, but with grief. Grief for the sister I thought I had. For the family I kept trying to believe in. What now? She whispered. I didn't answer, because I didn't know yet. Jessica came over 2 days later, unannounced, looking nothing like the curated version of herself the world adored. Her hair was tied up messily, her eyes rimmed red, and she wore a sweatshirt that swallowed her small frame. I didn't invite her in. I just stepped aside. We sat in silence for a while, each of us staring at a different corner of the living room. The air between us crackled with the weight of everything unsaid. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, she said finally. I don't expect it. I nodded. Good, because I'm not ready to give it. She bit her lip. I wanted to believe what they told me, that you were cold, detached, that you didn't care about legacy or family. It made it easier. They made it easy, I corrected. Jessica pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse and handed it to me. Mom told me you refused the inheritance. She said you sent an email saying you didn't want to be involved. I took the page, already knowing what I'd see. It was my own words, printed, highlighted, an email I'd written to Mom after Grandfather died. I just want him to rest in peace. I don't want the family fighting over money. Please don't involve me in that. At the time, I meant it. I thought it was a way to keep the family together. I didn't know she'd weaponize it. They used this, Jessica whispered. She showed it to the lawyer, said it was proof. Proof I didn't care, I said flatly. Proof I gave up what I didn't even know I had. We sat in silence again. Claire, she said softly, I want to help now. I looked at her. I don't need you to take sides. I need you to tell the truth. She met my eyes. Okay. That night, I compiled everything. The altered will, the voice memos, Vivian's recordings, Jessica's testimony, the framed property photo. I created a new Reddit account and uploaded it all in a detailed post under the title, My Family Erased Me from My Inheritance. Here's how they did it. I logged off and went to bed with a knot in my stomach. By morning, it had over 40,000 upvotes. The comments were a mix of outrage and disbelief. People sharing their own stories of financial betrayal. Others calling for justice, tagging legal professionals, media outlets. Something had shifted. Later that day, my inbox pinged with an unfamiliar name. Melanie Kohler, investigative journalist, Financial Abuse Series. Her message was concise. I've read your story. I'm currently investigating inheritance manipulation and quiet financial cutting in families. Are you willing to talk? We spoke that afternoon over Zoom. She listened, asked sharp questions, requested documentation. She didn't promise revenge, just truth. After we ended the call, I reached out to a private attorney recommended through a Reddit DM. He was direct, calm, and surprisingly warm. If we can prove your grandfather wasn't in full mental capacity when the final will was signed, he said, we have a case. But that document was filed after his death. Exactly. We'll challenge its validity. And just like that, something in me clicked. I began waking up early, eating real meals, running again. My body ached less. I slept better. And I painted. It started with rough strokes on a canvas I hadn't touched in nearly 20 years. The first image was blurry, just color and motion. But it felt like breathing again. I lost hours in it. Days. It was like peeling back layers of myself that had been sealed off by silence. Jessica visited again, this time with baby books and coffee. She stayed quiet as I painted, occasionally offering a soft smile. We weren't healed, but something had softened. Then, one evening, while I was sketching a concept piece for a painting I wanted to title Inheritance, my phone buzzed. New email. Subject, what really happened that night. The sender was unknown. The message read, "My name is Rachel. I was one of your grandfather's night nurses. I was there the night he died. I know what they did. I've stayed quiet for too long. Please, let me help." I stared at the screen, my heart racing. A witness. Someone from inside the room. Someone who saw the truth. Rachel met me at a small cafe near the edge of town, wearing scrubs and a badge she nervously tucked into her coat pocket. Her eyes were tired but steady. "I don't want anything from you," she said first. "But I remember that night, and I can't stay quiet anymore." I nodded. "Tell me everything." She sipped her tea, then began. "Your grandfather was restless that evening, agitated. He kept asking to see you. Said there was something urgent he needed to finalize with you directly." I felt my chest tighten. "Your father came by just after dinner. They argued," she continued. "I stayed just outside the door, but I heard enough. Your grandfather said, 'You don't get to decide this. It's Claire's right.' And your dad said, 'She doesn't need it. You know she'll just throw it away.'" "What happened after?" "He called me in," Rachel said, voice low. "Told me to sedate your grandfather for the night. I refused. He wasn't in distress. But your mother arrived minutes later with another nurse. Someone they brought. I was told to go home early. I didn't argue. I should have." I placed my hand over hers. "You're here now. That matters." That night, I filed the lawsuit. It wasn't just about reclaiming assets. It was about stripping the family story bare and revealing the cracks beneath the polished surface. My attorney filed under grounds of fraud, manipulation of power of attorney, and unlawful filing of a forged document. Word spread quickly. Within a week, my parents' lawyer called mine. "They want to resolve this quietly," he said. I declined. Then came the calls. First, Mom. "You're tearing this family apart," she said, her voice tight but trembling. "Is that what you want?" "No," I replied. "That's what you already did. I'm just pulling off the curtain." Then Dad emailed. Short, cold. "This won't end the way you think it will. We were protecting you," Jessica called, begging me to reconsider. "They're spiraling, Claire. I've never seen them like this. Maybe if we just talk—" "It's too late for talking. What if it ruins everything?" I took a deep breath. Then maybe it was never worth preserving. I didn't hide anymore. I did an interview with Melanie, the journalist, who ran a full feature about the case. The article went viral. "The daughter they erased, quiet cutting in America's most sacred institution, the family." Public sentiment turned fast. Strangers flooded the comment sections with solidarity, shared stories, legal offers. My parents, once pillars of the community, suddenly found themselves under a microscope. Their silence became louder than any denial. When the court date came, I sat straight-backed in my charcoal blazer, watching my parents avoid my eyes. Jessica sat alone behind me. Rachel testified. Vivian did too. The email, the altered will, the voice memos, the sedative order. Each piece lined up like puzzle edges clicking into place. The judge ruled in my favor, partially. I was awarded my grandfather's original share of the estate, the 73rd Street condo included. But more than the assets, I had won something else. Visibility. The judge's words echoed in my mind. "There is no legal penalty for being erased by your family, but today, this court will ensure at least one story gets rewritten." The aftermath came quietly. Jessica packed her things and moved into her own apartment, far from our parents. She called once every few days, sometimes just to breathe on the other end. Mom didn't speak to me for weeks. Then, one morning, a manila envelope arrived at my door. No return address. No note. Inside was the original letter from my grandfather. The one from my 18th birthday, this time intact, in full. "Claire, if you're reading this, it means someone finally gave you what I meant for you to have. Or maybe you found it yourself. Either way, I'm glad. You've always been different. That's not something to hide. You see through things most people accept. You carry the weight of truth, even when it's heavy. That's why I trusted you. This legacy isn't money. It's your name, your story. Don't let anyone rewrite it for you. Live boldly. Live kindly. But most of all, live honestly. Love always, Grandpa. At the bottom, in shakier ink, a handwritten line. Claire, if you're reading this, it means someone tried to keep it from you. I cried for a long time, not because I was sad, but because, for the first time, someone had seen me, really seen me, not as a burden, not as a mistake, but as someone worth remembering. The day my essay was published in The Atlantic, my inbox exploded. The title, The Inheritance That Wasn't, stood stark and bold across the top of the screen. Under it, a photo of me standing in front of a blank canvas, expression calm but unsparing. In the piece, I didn't use names. But the story? It was unmistakably mine. Within hours, messages poured in, from daughters in Ohio and sons in Korea, from nurses in Toronto and lawyers in Berlin, people who had been cut from wills, denied their place in families, erased not with malice but with silence, people who had been told they were too much, too independent, not the kind to need help. Readers translated the essay into Spanish, French, Tagalog, Hindi. Someone asked if they could narrate it on a podcast. A woman in Sweden sent me a letter. Your story made me believe I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining it. Thank you. I hadn't expected this, not the volume, not the emotion, but what struck me most were the stories that sounded eerily like mine. One woman wrote, "My mother told me she was protecting me when she gave my inheritance to my brother. I believed her until I read your piece." Another said, "They said I didn't need it, because I went to college, because I made it on my own. I thought it was my fault I was left out." It wasn't. None of it had ever been our fault. In a quiet corner of the internet, a movement began. Posts tagged Yichao silent inheritance and Tao cut without consent multiplied. Journalists reached out. Therapists began using my story in group sessions for survivors of family-based financial abuse. My parents never responded publicly, but their absence spoke volumes. The community groups they'd once been proud of, church boards, alumni networks, neighborhood committees, began quietly distancing themselves. Donations dried up. Invitations disappeared. Their curated life cracked at the seams. Jessica called often now. She never apologized again, not because she wasn't sorry, but because we both knew some wounds can't be undone, only honored. She listened more, questioned things she used to accept. Sometimes she just sat on the phone while I painted, saying nothing. 6 months later, I packed my things and moved to Vermont. The studio was small, tucked in a renovated barn with tall windows and wood beams that creaked in winter. I painted every day, sometimes from memory, sometimes from dream. My first piece in the new space was titled Undone Threads. It sold within a week, but I didn't paint for money. I painted to reclaim space, to take up room, to put color back where it had been drained. One afternoon in late October, Jessica drove up from the city. She arrived holding a flat box wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. "I made something for you," she said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. I hadn't seen her in months. She looked different, not polished but real, like someone who'd stopped pretending. We sat at the kitchen table. I poured tea. She untied the twine and slid the canvas toward me. It was a digitally generated piece, AI-assisted, just like the one she'd made for our father. But this one was different. It showed a woman standing alone in a forest, shafts of light breaking through thick trees. Her face was turned upward, eyes closed, bathed in gold. It was me. But not the version the world had known, not the sister or the daughter or the rebel. It was me as I saw myself, alive, whole. Jessica looked down. I wanted to try again, to see you the way I should have before. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Later, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I hung the painting in my studio. It faced the window, catching the morning light. Standing in front of it, I felt something shift. Not closure, but clarity. This was never about reclaiming money or even justice. It was about voice, about visibility, about no longer allowing others to narrate my story for me. I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was the author. I watched the sunlight creep across the canvas, warming the forest. I smiled, not because they saw me now, but because finally I saw myself.